Live look at the White House at 26 past the hour. Welcome back to Morning Joe. Joining us now from Clear Lake, Iowa, Democratic presidential candidate Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana. Great to have you on the show again this morning. How's it going?
Good to be with you. It's nice out, a little chilly, but we're having a great time here in Iowa.
All right, let's dig right in. I want to talk about Elizabeth Warren revealing her plans to pay for her Medicare for All plan. Looking at the numbers, some would say this is as likely to pass as Mexico paying for the wall. Is there a concern with the Democratic frontrunner, potentially the nominee, putting out ideas that are fanciful in the age of Trump?
I do think that, one of the hallmarks of the Democratic Party should be our seriousness. And we need to make sure that everything we propose makes sense. If you're just counting on immigration reform for $1 trillion worth of the funding for a hallmark plan, it raises some concerns about how achievable it is. But the thing to me is, major health care reform really is achievable if we set it up the right way. What I'm proposing with Medicare for All who want it can be done for $1.5 trillion. That's still obviously a huge sum of money, but it's also paid for. We can find that funding without being in a situation of having economists arguing over differences in estimates to the tune of trillions and trillions. But there are really two big concerns about Senator Warren's approach. One of them is the cost. The other is the idea of kicking people off their private plan. And again, we don't have to do that to implement a bold change that would be the biggest thing we've done to Medicare since it was invented in the first place. The idea of Medicare for All who want it, my plan, is we give everybody the chance to be on Medicare, and we also let you decide whether you want it. And I think leaving the choice to the American people is the better option for us in our lives as Americans, as well as being part of a plan that's easier to explain how we're going to pay for.
So, Mayor Pete, how would you characterize her plan? You said that what you guys put forward needs to be serious. Is it not serious?
Well, what I would say is that we need to make sure that there's an ironclad explanation of how to fund things. And what I'm offering is something that can very clearly be paid for with a combination of the rollback of the Trump corporate tax rate cut and the savings we're going to get by allowing Medicare to negotiate with drug companies. I'll let others speak to the other plans, other than to say I think my plan is better because it's dramatically more affordable and because it allows you to choose your plan.
Mike.
Mr. Mayor, Iraq, Afghanistan, the endless wars that the president keeps talking about. A, do you think we should withdraw from both Iraq and Afghanistan? And if you do, B, how would you do it? What would be your timetable? And how would you continue to fight terror in this world?
Well, a big example of how to do it is actually what we were doing in Syria before the president abruptly drew us out. In other words, we did not have an open-ended, massive ground troop commitment in Syria. We had a small handful of special operators and intelligence assets, literally in some areas just a few dozen people, who were able to be the line between what was going on and the possibility of descending into chaos. That's very likely the way forward in the medium term for a place like Afghanistan. We've got to withdraw from Afghanistan in the context of a political settlement that protects American interests and sees to it that that country can never again be used as a base for a terror attack against the United States of America. In order to do that, that very likely means having some kind of very targeted, very small, light footprint presence of special operators and intelligence assets. Where the president seems to have gotten confused is the idea that it's either endless war or total disappearance. Unfortunately, when you totally disappear from a volatile area, often that's exactly what can lead to more chaos and make a war more likely, which is exactly what we have seen in the case of Syria.
Michael Steele.
Hey, Mayor, it's Michael. So good to see you, buddy. Quick question for you regarding your Douglas plan. You have done a great work in sort of putting together a strategy to deal with a lot of the systemic issues around race and racism and the issues that a lot of African Americans had. Your plan was recently endorsed by like 400 South Carolinians, and I know that's sort of a big wall for you to hurdle. How is that coming along? How is your strategy now evolving in developing and building that relationship with the black community? not just because of South Carolina, but across the country, because you're going to need that ongoing support, growing support as you move beyond Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina into a full-blown presidential?
Well, what we've seen is that the substance of the Douglas plan is extremely well received in our outreach to black voters. This is the most comprehensive plan that's been put forward in this election in order to tear down systemic racism in all of its forms, and brings audiences to their feet when I get a chance to explain it. But we've got a lot of engagement ahead. The substance is good, but we still got to go out there and make sure that I do my job as a candidate and that there's no question in any voter's mind, especially black voters, trying to size up my campaign of where we stand. And some of that is things that that you'll see as we do campaign events in places like South Carolina and reach out, not just in political settings, but really find voters where they're at. It's one reason I was really pleased to be able to speak at the AME Zion Church Convention recently when we were in South Carolina. But some of it's more low-key, not necessarily things you'll see on TV or reflected in the media. One-on-one conversations with leaders, with activists, with pastors as we travel, and just picking up the phone to make sure that I'm getting the right input and that I've conveyed what it is we seek to do. That work is going to take a lot of time, and we got to keep doing that engagement. And we know it may not pay off fully until people are making up their mind in those last few days of the race, but we got to be doing that work every day, and that's what my focus is right now.
Jonathan Lemire.
Mr. Mayor, President Trump quite some time ago announced his intention to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. Today is the day that he actually can begin that process. It'll take about a year. So my question for you is this. What will you do to sort of, I assume you'll return to the agreement, but is there more to be done to undo what has happened in the last few years because of the president moving out of this agreement? And in particular, we see the apparent impact of climate change all the time, particularly right now in California with these wildfires. And yet the president seems to be threatening to withhold federal assistance there. So let me ask you those two questions again. First of all, is that appropriate at all from this president? And secondly, what more can be done to protect the environment, to protect climate change in light of what this president has done with the Paris deal?
Well, the really disturbing thing about the president threatening to withhold disaster assistance is he's behaving like he's only the president for some Americans. When you were the president of the United States, you were responsible for the safety of every American and for supporting every American, especially when they are recovering from a disaster. So there's just no excuse for that behavior. Now, on the big picture around climate, Paris should be viewed as a floor, not a ceiling. And I actually see an opportunity in this. As bad as it has gotten with both how close we are to catastrophe in climate and the disappearance of U.S. leadership from the world stage, I also see in that the opportunity to do something important, which is restore American credibility. But climate is the top example of a major issue that the U.S. can't solve alone because most of the emissions are coming from around the world, and that the world can't solve without us because we're still in the leadership position and we're the world's largest economy. That means that we must show global leadership, and when we do, when the people of the world and the leaders of the world see America leading on global climate change, when global climate diplomacy is something that really matters, that is a really important way that we can reestablish our credibility and leadership on an issue where we really are needed.
Karine.
Hey there, Mayor Pete. It's Karine Jean-Pierre. You said last week that you thought that Donald Trump, it would be better for Donald Trump to take a thumping at the polls rather than be removed by Congress through impeachment. So my question to you is, do you not think that the offenses that Donald Trump has done are impeachable? Do you not think that's the case?
Oh, no, it's impeachable. There's no question that he deserves to be removed from office. And it's not just the things that will emerge in the investigation. It's the things that he confessed to on television. What is on my mind, though, is that we got to deal not just with Trump, but with Trumpism. And whether it's him on the ballot, if he does survive this process, and we're dealing with him next November, or in some other way, it's going to be really important for the American people to send a message to people like the congressional Republicans who deep down know better than to be on board with this. They're riding a tiger, but they're not listening to their own conscience because they think to stay in power requires them to stay stapled to the Trump presidency long past when it's been defensible in any way. And so what's on my mind is how do we make sure, no matter who the president is next November, and knowing what I know of Senate Republicans, there's a good chance that it remains President Trump, that we not only win the presidency, but have such a decisive election victory that it has enough shockwaves that it can reunite congressional Republicans with our conscience and bring an end not just to the Trump presidency, but to Trumpism as a force in American politics.
So, Mayor Pete, I'm going to take another stab at the he's too young question, because a lot of fans here for you on the set of Morning Joe. We love having you on. But we hear that along the way. And in the debates, it's often there's 9, 10, 12 people on stage. You don't really get a chance to put yourself up against one or two other candidates. So I'd like to ask you to respond to Biden's contention. Joe Biden's contention that he has the experience, the life experience, as well as the service experience to bring this country back to where it needs to go, to put it back on track. He's got the experience geopolitically. He's got the contacts across the globe. He has the life experience. He's been challenged in many ways. And that's his argument, that he can do the job. He's been there. He's served as vice president. What makes you more qualified than Joe Biden?
Well, experience matters, and it deserves to be respected. So does judgment. So does vision. And I'm offering a different vision. I'm offering a different approach. What I'm putting forward is the idea that there's no such thing as going back to normal. But we don't have to be afraid of that if we build a new normal that's going to work better. I just don't think that Donald Trump is a blip or an aberration. I think we got to this point as a country for a reason. And I think we got to see into the future in order to understand what is going to be required of the next president. I'm certainly young. I'm the youngest candidate in the field. Every candidate brings our mix of experience and vision to the table. And while it's certainly true that wisdom can come with age, it's not true that they're the same. Just look at the current White House. We have the oldest president we've ever had, and by no means the wisest.
Well, we don't think you're a blip either, Mayor Pete. Great to have you back on the show. Good luck. We'll be watching Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Thank you very much. And still ahead.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.